Welcome to Bienville Studios. My name is JT Nesbitt. Today we're filming in the lounge section upstairs of the studio. And I'd like to take a couple of minutes to talk about a really special motorcycle. It's special to me for a number of reasons. But before we get into this particular bike, I want to talk about Brough Superior. What constitutes a Brough Superior? Well, it's a high-performance air-cooled V-twin that was bought in to the company. That engine was placed in a chassis of the company's manufacturer. The suspension of a Brough is a bought-in piece that's the finest piece of suspension that could be had at the time. Non-unit construction, so the transmission and engine are separate. They were radically expensive motorcycles at the time, and they were purchased by celebrities. I would say that this motorcycle checks all of those boxes. This is my 1995 Confederate G1 Hellcat, and I have a real personal relationship to this motorcycle, this particular one. In the winter of 1995, I was writing for a magazine called Iron Horse, and I was invited to a show in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a motorcycle show. At that show, I encountered the most amazing motorcycle I had ever seen. At the time, the most common high-end American motorcycle was a customized FXR with some kind of goofy airbrush paint job on it with lots of chrome. This machine, raw, unfiltered, high-performance, badass motorcycle, was really the first of its kind. We sort of understand this genre today, but it really all began with Confederate motorcycles and Matt Chambers. This was the first year of production, and this bike is chassis number 3. Now, I've done some research, and it looks like chassis number 1 was actually held back from production, and chassis number 2 is still unaccounted for. So this is, to the best of my knowledge, the oldest, complete, and running Confederate in the world. This motorcycle made its way to the West Coast, where it was disassembled and a lot of parts were taken off of it. Mike Reese discovered this motorcycle in 2017, and when he let me know that he had acquired it, I immediately started pestering him to sell it to me. It took him a little while to figure out that he wasn't ready for the incredible journey towards restoration that this motorcycle would require. There's no manual for this motorcycle. All of the parts that were missing, I had to make. So I had to recreate many components and be very careful with the restoration. While many sharp-eyed viewers will see a few parts that aren't exactly the way that these bikes were delivered, I have made the parts in a way that allows them to be reversed to put this bike back completely stock. But I made some concessions for ergonomics so that I could actually ride it, and quite a few performance upgrades. One of the performance upgrades that was really important is the swing arm pivot. I devised a new system for the swing arm pivot that did away with the use of conical bearings to convert this to a needle roller swing arm pivot with a needle roller thrust faces on either end. I also managed to get a hold of the period correct smooth rocker boxes, which were a factory option starting in 1997. This was a tremendous amount of work. This bike had been flooded out, so it required a complete engine rebuild, which was done by an amazing man named Mr. Barry Wardlaw at Accurate Engineering, who's a dear friend of mine. This engine is serial number T0013. This is one of the very first complete engines ever built and sold by George Smith, the old man from S&S. This is a 93 cubic inch. It's basically a D-stroked 97, and it is incredibly powerful. The engine serial number T0013 is matched to the corresponding stamp on the steering neck. So this is a matching numbers bike. Chassis 1, like I said, was held back because it doesn't have the original Performance Machine wheels, and it does not have the matching engine serial number stamped on the steering neck. I had to remake the exhaust system using the old one as a template And I decided to make the new exhaust system out of stainless steel to prevent what had happened to the old one, which it completely had rotted out. Barry Wardlaw also rebuilt the transmission. And the Confederate transmission is a real different kind of thing. It's actually a 5-speed Harley transmission that runs in reverse so that it's right side drive. And one of the really interesting things about these early bikes is that the chain drive, the right side chain drive, is actually held in place. The entire transmission is locked into the swing arm pivot. It's a really interesting way of ensuring that the entire powertrain is located positively and strongly in the chassis. It's not like a Harley at all. These performance machine wheels are a dead giveaway for early Hellcats. The steel tub fender is another dead giveaway for early Hellcats. I made a new set of handlebars because the original handlebars that came with this bike were kind of like a tiller. It was like beach bars. So I remade a new set of handlebars in the style of those bikes that were delivered late in 1996. The early Hellcats have performance machine calipers and rotors. And rebuilding these early performance machine components was really difficult. I actually had to build a plating setup to be able to retain and replate the original cast iron rotors. They are not being manufactured anymore. All of the suspension was rebuilt by my good friend Max McAllister at Traction Dynamics. Another fascinating piece of documentation I have for this motorcycle is the original brochure in the original unaddressed envelope. I studied it constantly. It totally changed my perspective about what an American motorcycle could be. I also have a complete set of the original hand-drawn blueprints for all of the components on this motorcycle, drawn by Robbie Miller in 1995. As a young man, when I saw this, it really triggered something deep inside of me that says, yes, you can build a motorcycle in Louisiana. I think it's so interesting to have this machine, which was made in Baton Rouge, next to the Wraith chassis, which was built here in New Orleans, and a Curtis 1 chassis. And behind me is, of course, the Simplex, built right here in New Orleans. I think that there's something really special about these early Baton Rouge-built Hellcats. What an inspiration for the Magnolia 4 project. And just look at what an exquisitely beautiful, long, luxurious, but powerful motorcycle the original G1 Hellcat is. At some point, people are going to realize how special these motorcycles truly are. And they, I believe, will be coveted and appreciated just like Brough Superiors are today.